Yama, or as they say here in Ghana country, Nina Mani. I'm Jack and I'm here at Warraparinga on traditional Ghana lands to bring you a BTN special about Australia's First Nations people and our connection to country. We'll find out about native title and Australia's long journey to recognising land rights. Tiana teaches us about welcome to country, and we learn more about traditional names of places. First, let's take a look at native title. As you probably know, Indigenous people lived here for tens of thousands of years before Europeans arrived. But it took a long time for Australian law to recognise their land rights. Let's take a look at how that came about.
My name is Dwayne Coulthard. I'm an Ajamata Guga person from South Australia. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have been here for tens of thousands of years. This land has always been important to us, but long ago, life was very different. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people were the first Australians. They lived all over the country as different groups of people with their own languages, ways of life, and dreaming stories.
The Mimis are happy spirits. They come out as night falls to keep the country tidy. They look after the land.
In different areas, they lived in different ways. They developed skills and knowledge based on the environment. But everywhere, the relationship to the land was strong. They took what they needed and made sure the areas where they lived and hunted were allowed to regenerate and survive. They cared for the land and respected it. But things changed when European settlers arrived. During settlement in 1788, the British then employed the doctrine of terra nullius, which means that nobody essentially lived in Australia when the British arrived, which we now know today as untrue. The settlers thought their own way of life was the best way to live, and that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people should try to behave more like them. For a long time, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders had very few rights and no claim to the land of their ancestors. In the 1980s, a guy called Eddie Mabo fought the idea of terra nullius in court, and in 1992, he won. On that date, we now celebrate Mabo Day. The Mabo decision was about recognising the continuing culture of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in Australia, that despite colonisation in 1788, the culture still continued today and will continue on in the future. That's really important because while a lot of time has passed, for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, our connection to land is still very strong. Your home is always where your people have come from. And it's important now for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander young people to acknowledge that, to embrace that and be proud about their history. And a big part of that is their connection to country and their ancestors' connection to country that have spanned thousands of years. There have been many challenges for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, but one thing won't change. Your country is a significant part of who you are, and that will never change, despite the fact that you may live in different areas of Australia, or you might not live on your local traditional lands, but you still have that connection to the country as a whole. And I think that has been something that has continued on to this very day, is that idea that we belong to this land and this land belongs to us.
What's the name of this Torres Strait Islander man who went to the High Court to fight for Indigenous land rights? It's Eddie Mabo. Speaking of land, what was the legal concept that Australia's colonisers used to claim that the land belonged to no one? Is it terra nucleus, terra nullius, or terra australis? It's terra nullius, which is Latin and means nobody's land. In which year was the Mabo decision made by the High Court? 2002, 1992, or 1982? It's 1992. As I mentioned before, the place I'm standing on belongs to the Kaurna people. To tell me more about Warraparinga, I'm joined by Thomas, who is the cultural advisor. Tell me, what is the cultural significance of this area?
Well, it's quite significant. It was a seasonal camp. One of many camps dotted all over the Adelaide Plains area. But there's also another significant reason. There was a place where a very important ancestor lived in this particular area, Warraparinga. An ancestor that was very well respected, very important to the Kaurna people. Yeah, and he established laws, and which laws Kaurna people have been following for many, many thousands of years. So it's a quite significant story. The Kaurna people would travel seasonally to this place every season around the same time, because this is a special place in regards to the ancestor I was talking about. This is where they'd come and connect to him, basically. And it's regarded, we believe, when we come back to country, to where we belong, and we connect, it's a way of healing. So this place is also regarded as a healing place for the Kaurna people, yes.
Do you think it's important for people to go along to places like this, wherever they are in Australia, to learn more about the country that they're standing on and they're working and living on? Oh,
totally. There's not a lot of information out there when it comes to Aboriginal people and culture and history. So no, I believe it's critical. It's highly recommended that you go and visit places like this and learn off the local people. Yeah, very important.
As you just heard, the land is really important to First Nations people. And up next, we're going to learn about a special ceremony that's used to welcome people to our country. Here's Tiana to tell us all about it.
Marina Bunigani Nanai Tiana. That means welcome to Kaurna country. My name is Tiana. Kaurna is the language of my family and people. Today I'm going to be telling you about a really important ceremony, a welcome to country. You've probably seen someone do a welcome to country before, maybe at a big event or a meeting or maybe at a school. I give welcomes with my nanny and my mum around the Adelaide area, and sometimes my little sister comes too. Marina Bunigani, welcome to Kaurna country. I've done welcomes for the Women's AFL, my school assemblies, and for the International Women's Day March. So what is a welcome to country? Well, it's basically a way to welcome visitors onto country. It's been a part of the Indigenous cultures for thousands of years. You see, Australia is made up of hundreds of different Indigenous language groups, or countries. And while there aren't any visible borders, Indigenous people have clear boundaries to separate one country from another. When crossing into another group's country, you would need to request permission and be welcomed to enter their land. While things have changed a lot since the colonisation, welcome to countries are still a way of welcoming outsiders and offering a safe passage. They're usually delivered by an elder, but sometimes younger people like me and my mum are given permission to welcome people to our country. They can be done through singing, dancing, smoking ceremonies, and in a traditional language. My nanny made this cloak for me, and sometimes I wear it when I'm doing a welcome. The Possum Cloak has many uses. It was traditionally used as a baby carrier. It kept the baby safe and warm on mum's back. My ancestors also wore it for protection from the weather and in ceremonies too. And when it's turned inside out, it was used as a water and food carrier.
I also would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians.
There are also acknowledgements of country. They can be done by non-Aboriginal people as a way of showing respect for the traditional owners of the land which they are on, and to recognise their continuing connections to the land. Welcome to countries are really important to me because it gives us an opportunity to welcome people to a new camp where we can listen and learn together. And when I perform, I feel excited, happy and special. It makes me feel really proud and strong too. Naitalia, thanks for watching. Nakara!
One way to recognise connection to country is through names. If you look around your neighbourhood, you'll probably notice some place names that are either in an Indigenous language or are based on an Indigenous word. And many would like to see more Aussie landmarks given their traditional names. Have you ever wondered how places got their names? Like, why is Sydney Sydney? Who is Kimberley anyway? Was this place just really great at sweeping? And what makes this reef so great? Oh, I guess that's pretty obvious, isn't it really? Anyway, where was I? Names, that's right. Australia's full of all sorts of interesting names. Some places are named after towns in the UK, like Newcastle, named after a coal port in the north of England. Some are named after people, like the Flinders Ranges, named after the English navigator and cartographer, which, by the way, is a person who draws maps. But many other names are taken from one of the many Indigenous languages across Australia. Take Wollongong, for example. It comes from the Dharawal word Woolyounga, meaning the Five Islands. And Canberra comes from the word Kembara, meaning meeting place in the Ngunnawal language. And then there are dual names. Probably the best known dual name in Australia is Uluru. It's also known as Ayers Rock, the name given by British surveyor William Goss back in 1872. But for the Pitjantjatjara people, this sacred site had been Uluru for thousands of years. And in 1993, this iconic landmark became the first in the Northern Territory to get two official names, which meant changes to road signs, maps, and other things like postcards. This change led to a whole bunch of dual namings right across Australia. In Adelaide, the River Torrens was dual named its original Kaurna name, Karawirapari. And Victoria Square was dual named Tantanyanga. Hey, that's my line. Now many in Tasmania are hoping that their capital Hobart will soon also be known by its Palawakani name, Nipaluna. It's something the Tasmanian Aboriginal Centre has been urging the council to consider for a while now. The council is also considering renaming a bunch of other landmarks to honour Palawa people. For example, Franklin Square could become Truganini Place, in honour of the Palawa woman who fought to protect her people. And while they haven't made a decision yet, the council says it would be a great step towards reconciliation. Many people are pushing for more dual names in other parts of Australia, as a way of recognising the cultures that were here before colonisation, and the original names of these spectacular Aussie sites. Which Australian capital city has a name based on an Indigenous word? It's Canberra. It's based on a Ngunnawal word which means meeting place. Which capital city belongs to the Kaurna people? Is it Adelaide, Melbourne, or Perth? It's Adelaide. What's the traditional name of Botany Bay? Is it Kamei, Bondi, or Coogee? It's Kamei. What's the Palawakani name for Hobart? It's Nipaluna.
You're watching BTN from St. Matthew's School Narrative. Woo!
Now it's time to find out about the seasons. And I'm not talking about summer, autumn, winter, and spring. Australia's first people have their own versions of the seasons based on the weather patterns here. Let's find out more. These guys are learning about the seasons, but not the ones you'd recognise.
You've got to say it 3 times. Well, tatty.
Well, tatty, well, tatty, well, tatty.
Good. That's summer.
Uncle Lewis and Auntie Susan have paid these guys a visit to teach them all about the Kaurna seasons.
In the winter months, we would move more towards the shelter and warmth. Now, if it's stinking hot, where are we going to go? Yeah.
Instead of using dates to mark the change of a season, they follow the cycle of plants, animals, water, and the stars.
We look at the stars, we look at the plants, we look at the winds, and so we look at all the indicators, and that's how we follow what's going on.
With the help of the Bureau of Meteorology, they've now created this Ghana seasonal calendar to help other kids learn it too. There's Waltati, which is summer when the sun is hot. Parnati, or autumn, when this star is near the moon. Winter is known as Kudlilia, which means when the earth is washed. And spring, Wiltuti, that's when the eagle's foot, or the Southern Cross, is in a particular spot in the sky. But while the Ghana seasons are pretty similar to the ones we know, there are hundreds of other Indigenous groups around the country that have very different ones to match their local weather patterns. For example, up north around the Tiwi Islands, there are 3 distinct seasonal changes. Jumutukari, the wet season. This begins when the coals start to call and it means rain is on its way. Kumunupunari, the dry season of fire and smoke, when plants start to flower and possums are fat. And Tiari, the season of hot weather and high humidity, when creeks start to dry up and mangrove worms are easy to find. Meanwhile, over in WA, the Uluru people have 6 different seasons. Mangala, when flies and insects are everywhere. Murrel, when the tides are high and sea animals are small. The flowering bloodwood indicates the start of Wirralburu. Bargana, when fog covers the land. Birds start nesting during Wulburu. And in Laja, the ground is hot and turtles are laying their eggs. Back in the classroom, these guys say that it's been pretty cool learning about Ghana culture.
Today I learnt that when the Ghana people look up in the sky and they can tell by the stars what the season is.
In summer, they eat fish, and in winter, they eat other animals like possums.
Which season is known to the Ghana people as Kudlila, or when the earth is washed? Is it summer, autumn, or winter? It's winter. How many different seasons do the Uluru people in Western Australia have? 3, 4, or 6? They have 6. In which Uluru season do turtles lay their eggs? Is it Wirralburu, Bargana, or Laja? It's Laja. How many seasons do Tiwi Islanders in the Northern Territory have? Is it 3, 4, or 5? They have 3. Jumutukari, the wet season, Kumunupunari, the dry season, and Tiari is the season of hot weather and high humidity. Indigenous knowledge of the seasons and the environment is really important and is used more and more today. And so is Indigenous knowledge of Australia's amazing variety of edible and medicinal plants. Check it out. This might look like an ordinary garden filled with ordinary plants, but those in the know will tell you it's more like a kitchen pantry filled with delicious foods just waiting to be cooked. And that's exactly what these guys plan on doing.
Jack! You know you can't eat that. It needs to be cooked first.
Ah, yeah, I knew that.
Well, this is our Indigenous edible garden. We have lots of Indigenous plants that we like to use for cooking. We look after the plants and plants. We also put mulch around to make the place look nice. We water the plants and take care of them. It's really fun to get your hands dirty.
So what is this?
This is a wargle greens. They're a type of spinach. They grow like a lot.
And we can't eat them?
You can, but you have to cook them first so you don't get sick.
Okay, well that's good to know. The garden also includes stacks of other native foods, like lemon-scented grass, wattle seed, and old man saltbush. And what can this be used for?
Soups and salads.
They're just some of the almost 6,500 different types of native foods or bush tucker our country has to offer. For thousands of years, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have been growing and harvesting native plants, and not just for food. Some are used for healing, like arati, which can help ease cold and flu symptoms. Or some are used to make tools, like kumbunji, which can be weaved to make nets. But the plants in this garden are used for cooking. Right, so we've got our warrigal greens from the garden. What are we going to be making?
We're going to be making warrigal greens and fair triangles.
Yum. Do you want help cutting?
Yes, please. Okay. You have to do them very fine.
I will do them very finely. In the past few years, the bush tucker industry has really taken off, with things like Kakadu plum yogurt, bush apples, and goat's cheese coated in lemon myrtle and green ant crumb. Delish. Now, a group of scientists from the University of Queensland reckon it's time Aussies embrace the native foods our country has to offer. So they've been working with local Indigenous communities to try and boost the bush tucker industry in Australia and take it global.
But it means that we get to reinforce that information for ourselves and then share that passion and knowledge, not only with members of our family groups, but with the public as well, so that we can develop a combined appreciation of just how wealthy Australia is in terms of its native foods.
And on that note, I think it's time to eat. That's it for today's special on Connection to Country. I hope you enjoyed it. And we've got plenty of other specials on the BTN website, along with teachers' resources, plus all that other good BTN stuff. Nakara!